All right. So thank you everybody for joining us. And without further ado, here is James Kubel.
Well, good morning, everyone. Uh, my name's James, and Brandy is my wife. And I thought when she asked me to do this seminar, uh, I gave it some thought, and I thought one important thing I wanted people to understand was my character as as a person even before I lost my sight, because it plays a lot into my story of some of the things I've been able to achieve. Uh, uh, and so rather than, I'll kind of take a chronological approach uh, to from the beginning, and then we'll see what happens from there. I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 4 years old. And at that time, uh, I didn't know, anything about the disease, but the ratio of type 1 diabetics at that time was 1 in 10,000. And when I finally went to grade school, uh, there wasn't anybody in the schools that was diabetic. So, it was pretty uncharted territory. My mom started the Sacramento chapter of the Diabetes Foundation in hopes to help me. So that's kind of where it all begins for me. But as a very young boy, I was a tinker, uh, to the benefit and not so much so at times, but I took everything apart. I had an interest in how things work. And very young, I developed an interest in electronics. At age 8, I got my first soldering iron, and I remember an argument between my parents because here's something that gets very hot, and my mom's attitude was, well, if he burns himself, he'll learn not to touch it, you know. But that was kind of, food for my curiosity. So, and if I pause at times, I did take down some notes to kind of keep this in order. So bear with me. So I'll move ahead a little bit with, you know, when I was about 11 years old, I got my first job. I was official lawnmower, and anything mechanical or that I could take apart was always fair game. And when I turned 15, I became interested in cars, and that was a big thing for me. And my dad said, "Well, look at if you want to have a car, then you've got to earn the money for it and purchase it." And he went through all the normal things I'm telling our son now, that you got to be able to pay for insurance and all those great things. But one extra thing he required was that the car did not run. And so I bought my first car at age 15. It was a clunker, and it did not run. And I spent the next year working on that car to make it run by the time I was 16 and actually could drive it. So, but that kind of festered more curiosity and interest in things that have been with me my whole life. I enjoyed fixing the car, and I think at that time, kind of my dream started to really become a little bit more focused. As just a young kid, I knew I had this passion for electronics. Now I have a passion for cars. What could I do to mold the two? And really that drove me for a lot of years. Uh, when I was going to high school, of course, I had an interest in cars. So I tried to take automotive stuff. Those classes were full. So I took wood shop. Well, I found that I liked working with wood. So now I've got a couple different things that kind of really molded me to who I am today. And uh, uh, I remember when I was in high school, I couldn't take metal shop and things like that at first. So I went into wood shop. Well, I ended up entering in a contest for woodworking. It was a statewide contest, and I ended up winning the competition when I was in high school for a table I built, and we still have the table today in our living room. But a lot of people have asked me, well, how'd you learn to do a lot of these different things? It was really my interest that drove me, uh, and this was before I actually started having visual trouble. But there was always the diabetes and controlling your disease, and I was told that I was quite strict. I was raised very strict with with diabetes as far as what I could eat and managing the disease. But I always did know the threats of complications and you know but I kept busy and I tried to stay as healthy as I could. Well, I think it was in the 10th grade, my parents decided to put in a pool. And and so of course I was a broke high schooler. So I asked the contractor that was working on the pool, hey, do you have any work for me? And he thought, well, your parents are paying for the pool. And I said, well, yeah, but I need to earn some money. So he said, okay, I'll put you to work. So he did. I became official ditch digger. And, so my job was digging ditches. And I had worked for him for a couple different summers. And I remember a summer where I said, hey, can I do something a little different than just digging ditches? And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, why don't you let me do the electrical or let me do the plumbing? And so he said, I'll tell you what, we're doing two pools next to each other. Uh, one has been plumbed, one has not. He said, go look at the one that has been plumbed and plumb the other one. So I said, okay. So I did it. And that started me off on a trajectory with that company that ended up lasting quite a few years. I worked for them for quite a few years, and that went even further. I ended up doing all the wiring, and they, of course, also built homes. So that moved into wiring houses and plumbing homes. So I just kept that going, and then so that I carried through in some of my college years, but really, I started at a community college, and I knew uh, at a young age I loved electronics. I knew that that's kind of the direction I wanted to go, and I remember having a conversation with my uncle, who was an electrical engineer, and I was I had a stereo open. I was trying to understand and learn about. And I said, well, I asked him. I said, who put all these parts in this box? And he says, well, the people that do that are called technicians. I says, well, who knows how all of them go in there and how right and who tells them how to do that? He says, That's what engineers do. The light bulb went on for me. I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the guy that hooked them all together and knew how they all work together. And if anybody has ever bought something and said, look at this is a piece of junk, the person who designed it should be slapped, then I guess I'm the guy you should slap, because that's the stuff I'm into. And so it was something that it didn't just pop up as an idea to go into the field one day. I felt I was almost destined for it. So, when I finished community college, I still had that tendency to get involved in my interests. And so while I was doing my undergrad, I took automotive classes because I still had that thirst for wrenching on cars and stuff. Well, I ended up getting an AA in automotive technology by the time I finished my engineering prereqs. So then I started applying to universities, and I was accepted at the University of Colorado Boulder. So, I kind of left California and I, headed for Boulder. And this is where everything kind of comes together, because 2 or 3 months before I was supposed to leave to Colorado, I had a problem with my right eye. And so I ended up going in for surgery, and I lost the sight in the right eye, but still headed to Colorado. So, but my mental state at the time, I was really excited to pursue my interest and my degree in engineering, but yet there was this other thing, the sight thing that was lingering. And when I got into Colorado, I was having some visual trouble in the left eye, but I didn't, for some reason, I had it stuck in my mind that with getting this fancy education, and if I can't do it on my own, then what good am I? Which was really the wrong way to think about it, but I was young, and that was my attitude then, and so I didn't seek any help. I tried to make it through with partial vision in the left eye, no vision in the right, and eventually it got to be too much. So I knew I needed some medical help as far as the left eye. So I returned back to California and met with doctors and had thousands of lasers shot into the left eye to try to save it. At the same time, I enrolled in Sac State because I didn't want to, all the classes I'd taken, I didn't want to throw that away. So, I attended Sac State. And prior to, let's see, it went. It was quite a few months before I was even supposed to graduate. I applied for a technician position at IBM, and during the interview process, it got pretty technical, and they said to me, "Well, we feel you would be better in our engineering department than as a technician." I was very happy to hear that, and so they hired me as an engineer. And 2 days before I was supposed to start that job, I had a retinal bleed in my left eye. So my world got turned upside down. I was actually out on a job site doing some wiring, and I noticed this kind of red spot in my peripheral vision. So I knew what it meant. I knew it could not be good. So I came home, and of course I called the doctors, and I knew at that time that things were really going to change, because I didn't have the confidence from the right eye that they could fix the left, and so I went 9 months. The doctors told me that the blood would dissipate, which it never dissipated. It turned opaque, and it still knocked out my vision. At that time, I I was I did contact DOR. I got a little bit of training in mobility. Was running around with a white stick, but did not really have any good official training. So at that time in my life, I hadn't finished my degree, but that was something that was important to me. And I went to one professor, and I said, "Look, I've got to drop out of your class." It was in philosophy. It was a general ed class. I said, because he said, "Well, what's the problem?" I said, "Well, I went blind." And so he said, "Oh, well, that doesn't mean you have to quit the class." And I didn't understand. I was confused. And he says, "Would you mind talking to my wife?" And I said, "I guess so." And he said, uh, "My wife's been blind her whole life, and she'll help you." And her name was Harriet Lovett. And I called her, and she kind of propped me up. You know, there was, she told me, she put me in touch with some people at DOR, and kind of got the ball moving as far as you know how to actually get some training and make you know make use of my life, because at that moment I felt that everything I had dreamed about was lost. I could not see a way of working as an engineer with no eyes, and you know that was probably the beginning of my pity party. But I knew I had to go through the steps of some type of rehabilitation, and then of course they recommended me to go to the Orientation Center for the Blind in Albany, and of course that's where I met my wife, Brandy, and it was my leather jacket she fell in love with. But we
It was.
So that was really what got me to the Orientation Center for the Blind, which was really the first time that I really had to face the reality of where my life was going. I tried everything to fix the eye, and I was a fix-it guy, but that I couldn't fix. And that was a hard thing to chew on for me, because that was my expertise, was fixing things. But that was
my running joke is he can fix anything but dinner. Sorry, continue.
That's okay. No, so coming out of the Orientation Center for the Blind, it is pretty fair to say that I had depression going on. I was struggling internally with how to manage this, as well as even be able to do the things I enjoyed to do. But I knew I had gone to school to to be an engineer. And yet, you know, when I was at the orientation center, I even was told by some people that you might want to think about, you know, another field that you could parallel to that, or, you know, and so that was just giving food for thought to me. But also, you know, at the time, I thought the dream was over. I thought I could not do it uh, without sight. And many times, Brady and I had arguments over that very thing. You know, there's got to be a way to do it. So I decided that the only way I could see to be able to still do what I wanted to do was I needed to get some pretty mad software skills. So the first thing I did is I took some classes at the community college, Delta College, to uh, give me better software skills, programming skills. My technique, you know, my knowledge and experience had been in electronics, but I knew I needed another tool in my bag to help me adapt. And so a lot of my story is how I kind of reinvented myself to fit in this world, because it isn't easy. I'd never say that, but I started to come out of my depression when I found ways to actually accomplish things. What the dog said right there. So uh, in 1999, you know, I had done quite a bit of programming from the classes I learned, but I knew I needed a way to get it out to audio where I could make use of that information. So I designed a text to speech synthesizer called the Triple Talk PCI. I started that in 1999, and really uh, it wasn't a product that originally I thought of selling to the blind community. It was to help me. It was to be a piece of my toolkit. But in 2000, I started the company Access Solutions, and its first product was the Triple Talk PCI, because I found that a lot of blind people liked using hardware text to speech synthesizers. So, and I had designed this for myself in the beginning, really, uh, you know, but of course, you know, one of the problems that I had at the time was it wasn't configured to run with JAWS, or at the time Windows, or any of that. And so I called them and I said, could you support this card? And they said, sure, if you write all the drivers for it and send it to us. Well, I didn't have any of that done. So before I really could sell it, I used some of those software skills I learned, and I wrote all the driver packages for the Triple Talk PCI. And it needed to interface with OpenBook, and I had to write all those drivers. It was a big task, but I got it done. And but more importantly, uh, I accomplished something that really I needed to for my own esteem, uh, for me. I needed to know I could still do it, even though I couldn't see. I could still do it, and that was the first proof to me. So later, I released another one called the Triple Talk USB, which kind of self-explanatory, same kind of deal, hooked up via USB port, uh, and old serial ports, which we don't use very often anymore. But uh, it was just another synthesizer. So I kept it going, and I thought, you know, everybody talked about this deck talk that Digital Corporation had produced. It had better speech. So I thought, okay, I guess I'll create a deck talk. So I went and I contacted the company, and they didn't make the synthesizer anymore, but I found a company back east that had an algorithm for it. So, and some actual libraries for it. So I took that and I manipulated all of that, and I created the Deck Talk USB. And after creating that product, while creating that product is when things got exciting for me, because I got a call from Lockheed Martin, and they had used the old Deck Talk synthesizers in for air traffic control, and they wanted a new one for their system. So I took the Deck Talk USB, that design that I had done, and I had modified it to meet their specifications. But what at the time, I was really excited to do it, but it was also very scary because I was working directly with their engineering team. But I did not let them know that I was blind. I was afraid to death to let them know I was blind, because I thought I would lose the contract. So, and I remember getting these calls, and they'd say, "Look, we need to discuss part of your schematic." And of course, it was all my schematic. I had designed it, but it was very big. And so they said, "Can you pull up the PDF?" Sure, no problem. I pull it up, and they would say, "Well, we're looking down at this section over here." And I had no clue, because the way I created the schematic was I had worked it backwards, and I had friends that were also engineers that would print it for me and stuff, and put it in a nice, neat package. But that stuff I had no way of knowing. So I'd say, "Oh, well, I'm my computer's giving me all kinds of trouble. Can we resume this conversation a little bit later?" Or I just tried to postpone it because I needed to go figure out what he was talking, what area of my design he didn't like, and make sure I had it memorized. And that's exactly what I did. I went back, I reviewed, so I could have it in my head, because I was too. It wasn't embarrassed. I really felt that had I leveled with the guy that I couldn't see, they would lose all trust in me. And of course, I finished, the design for Lockheed. And then, of course, I was contacted by the FAA, and they were interested in this product that Lockheed had. And that started up a relationship with the FAA, and that extended on to Raytheon, and it just kind of really escalated. It was an exciting time, and I would have a lot of these conversations with these people, but always in the back of my mind was it was stressful, because I thought I didn't want to get cornered, and I really don't know what I was afraid of, as far as what could be the worst thing that could happen. I had already delivered the product. They were really happy with it. But, so at the time, I took another board for a company. It needed the same kind of a thing for a keyboard that was for somebody that was blind, and let's see, it was like I'm trying to remember what the product was all about, but it was it was for a company called ATI, and it was the same kind of deal. They needed a speech module. And so that's kind of where,
Blind and speech impaired.
yeah, blind and speech impaired. That's right. And so I took that project on, and I went and, I developed the board for them, and I went to CSUN. And when I was at CSUN, I wanted to see their product because it had my module that I designed. And, I remember coming up to the booth and, playing with the product. And I turned to them and I said, the audio sounds really good, but the speaker system in this thing sucks. And, they were trying to sell me the product and they didn't know who I was. And, but I was the one who had designed the module. So I left CSUN, I came back and called ATI and said, look, we've got to do something. The speakers you guys chose are not right. We got to fix it. So, but it was neat to see my product in action when I was at CSUN. And
the time is now 11 a.m.
Are we doing okay on time?
Yeah.
So that's kind of
You got until 11:30.
That's kind of what has driven me. And in 2009, it kind of circled back to the diabetes thing because, I was a pump user, and it really bothered me that insulin pumps were not accessible. So I contacted at the time Medtronic as well as Desatronics, and I said, hey, when are you going to make a pump that's accessible? And so that kind of started me off on another tangent where I developed a product called the Pump Mate, which was a remote control that talks to an insulin pump. And I remember when I developed this product, I needed to convince Medtronic that they should just include it with their pump. You get this little remote control, and when you send out a pump, for those that are visually impaired, they get this little remote control. Well, Medtronic didn't want to, at first they didn't want to give me the time of the day. And then so I set up a meeting, and I ended up going down to Medtronic and walked through the front doors with the product and said, look, this works. And part of that involved reverse engineering their communication protocol and developing, my own device with speech to operate the pump. In 2013, the National Federation for the Blind awarded me the Jacob Bolotin Award for that development. And today, I think I'm still the only blind guy that has a fully accessible insulin pump. I still use it today. And yeah, in fact, I always have it on my here really quick. It'll be interesting. I don't know if you guys can hear that.
Bolus, basal, download data from pump. Suspend or resume pump.
Just another speech device. We're all used to them, and basically, what I tried to do was make it so that I could control my insulin pump. And I've been told, I've been asked this question by doctors, has insulted me several times, and that is, well, who sets your insulin pump? I've even been asked who takes care of you. And those are things that, as us blind people, we're greatly offended.
Mhm.
So anyhow, that was the pump mate. I did file for patent. I went through that whole mess, which is a lot of people don't realize how much work is involved in filing for patents. I have filed for two, and there are a lot of paperwork, which wasn't my favorite stuff. I enjoyed uh, the hardware and even writing the software, but the paperwork drove me crazy, and as well as the expense. So now we're getting closer to the present day. In 2013, one of the things that I should mention is that learning some of the things I've learned, and with my automotive experience, my electrical experience, and those kind of things, I always felt I had those things to fall back on, but I never anticipated they were going to be something I had to fall back on as a blind person. That thought never even occurred to me when I was involved in all those things. But you know, times were getting a little tough, and we needed to make a little more money. So I decided, I'm going to go back to doing some wiring. So in 2013, I tried to reinstate my electrical contracting license, which when I was doing all the automotive stuff and the electrical stuff, I got my certifications. I got my electrical contracting license and my ASC certification in auto mechanics. And I, use those things to generate income. So now we move forward to 2013. I thought, well, geez, I could still do some wiring, and I could, maybe hire a few people. And so I went to the board and I said, can I reinstate my license? They said, you cannot, you can't do this work blind. So that started a big fight. I spent a year fighting the board till finally, a year later, they said, okay, if you pass the test, you got to retake the test. You pass the test, we'll give you the license. So I took the test, and I got the license. And so I started JK Electric, which is my electrical business, and still running today. Uh, it's not something I want to do for the rest of my life, but it keeps me active. It gets me out in the field, and one of the things that I still face is convincing people that a blind guy could wire. Uh, but I truly could wire blindfolded. I mean, I've done it that many times. I didn't need sight to do it. There are things that take me longer, and I've got some guys that work for me, and quite honestly, I'm tired of crawling through attics. But it was kind of my work in the engineering field. I truly still love, and I still do some of that. And but I needed a break. It's pretty intense, and so I did. I'm still running JK Electric today. It's still hard to convince people sometimes, but I've got a network. A lot of people find me on Nextdoor, and so they usually know before I show up. But sometimes I have run into we don't feel comfortable, and I don't get the job. I wish they'd tell me that before I bid it, because that takes my time, but it still does happen. but I've got a network that is grown, and so most of the jobs come pretty easy these days, and we do quite a bit. One of the things that I did, let's see, between starting JK Electric in 2014, I flew back east to Boston. I was invited from a friend back east to a convention called Brain Trust. And, it was my belief that, what it really was about brain trauma and, what we could do to help those people. But what my main interest was as a blind person meeting some of the people involved in some of the adaptive stuff. And it was really just for me kind of a networking thing. And I was looking to get involved in a system that helped, and you'll be happy about this, football players. So I met, actually, I didn't get to meet any Packer football players, but I did meet players for Seattle Seahawks. So that's a shout out to you, Diane. I was pulling for you for the Packers, but I didn't have any luck there.
Oh,
So anyway, it comes down to now. I was accepted into Sac State's grad school, and people ask me, well, why now are you going back to school? And it's really it still feeds my curiosity and interest, but more importantly, I'm doing it for the networking part. If you're not up to date in certain areas, and my focus is really in AI and deep learning stuff, both hardware and software. So just building my toolkit again. And I constantly go back to that, building my own toolkit so I can do and be proficient in a field I love. And really, I think the only difference between a fully sighted engineer and a blind engineer is time. It just takes us longer to get the input. It doesn't take me longer to process it. In fact, in a lot of cases, I process it faster than a lot of people. But it still takes time to get the information, and accessibility is not where it needs to be for STEM. I think it's got a ways to go, but I hope I can be part of that solution. I'm working on a design right now that will read advanced mathematics and put it into speech. I developed a program called MathBat, which is math in blind accessible terminology, which I developed for using MATLAB, which is common in graduate level courses. And I knew that I was going to have to use that program. It doesn't work well with JAWS or any screen readers. So I wrote my own interface, and that's how I accomplish using MATLAB. I use my own program, and so I'm constantly reinventing myself to fit and still be able to do what I love to do. And I think a lot of what has gotten me through it is my hobbies. Of course, my special wife, she helps me, but it's really part of
oh,
reinventing yourself and having Sac State is a good example. I'm not impressed by their disabled student services, but I'm my own advocate. And I've had to do a lot of that throughout my life, is push through and never being mean, but standing up for myself. And so those are some of the lumps and bumps I've taken along the road. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Awesome.
Any questions?
Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, Jim, it's Sam here.
Sure.
I have some questions.
Yeah.
So I'm actually married to a blind diabetic who is probably older than you, but I'm all fascinated with the whole history of the way diabetes has been treated over the years. So when you were first diagnosed, how old were you when you got your first glucose monitor? Home testing kit.
Oh gosh. Let me think about that. A lot of years later. I started with Clinitest, which was you put drops in a test tube, and you threw drops of urine in a test tube with drops of water, and you threw a tablet in it. And
oh, that's really effective, right?
Yes, which depending on when was the last time you actually peed, had a lot to do with its, how accurate it was. I'm trying to think when I got my first glucometer. I was in high school. So
as like a 4-year-old, did you start out with, okay, first off, what kind of syringes? Were they disposable, or were they kind that
no, they were glass. I boiled them.
Glass, you had to boil them.
And I
and you got one injection a day?
I got up to I had 3 injections a day.
Wow.
I started drawing the insulin and giving those injections at age 5.
Wow.
Because my mom said that I wanted to spend the night at my cousin's, and she said, you can't until you figure out how to draw your own insulin and give your own injections. So that was a challenge, and I did. And they started me on 1 injection, but I found quickly, not I, but the doctors felt that I would have better control at 3 injections. And that changed over the years. At one time I was just on 2, but I still, mainly I use the pump, but sometimes I have to take injection still.
Okay, then my next dumb blind girl joke, or blind girl, it's not a joke, it's dumb girl, blind girl question. Don't electricians have to be able to match the one color wire with the other color wire? Like if you put the wrong wires together, that could be a problem.
Of course, that's a problem, but what's more importantly is that you can hook up all the wires the same color and still have a good working circuit. But what's important, there is color code in the field, but it's pretty simple because, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put a piece of tape on, one of the wires. So I know if I know one of the colors, especially if it's a piece of Romex, which has 3 wires, I could tell the other 2 apart. So, I do some color coding, and I've even called Be My Eyes and said, hey, what color is this? I've had to use that more than once.
Okay.
But I have a talking voltmeter that I use. I designed one of them that I have that for that purpose of testing voltages.
So pretty much if you see a need and nobody makes it, you make it.
Right. That's kind of what I do. What a lot of people don't understand is the expense involved. I've been through UL Underwriter Laboratories. I've been through, FCC, all the regulations, and that's thousands of dollars. When I ran the deck talk through those tests, I mean, we spent a lot of money for those approvals, and so you take a little device that is supposed to be approved in our country, and where does the bottom line end up? Well, you have to charge the user for it. And, if I'm making 100,000 of them, that's not a problem. I can make them pretty cheap, but with a small niche for the blind community, I remember charging $700 for the Deck Talk USB, and people were like, "Oh my God, how could you ever charge that much?" Well, digital was charging $1,100 for the deck originally, but it's for that reason. We don't make enough of them to charge what it really should cost people.
Yeah.
Adaptive equipment is expensive for that reason.
Yep.
Jim, this is Liz. I have a question for you. So, we have students who have worked in construction or even were engineers, and now that their vision has changed, like the uncertainty of being able to enter those fields again. Could you give me like the top 3 skills that are essential to you being able to go out and do your job or go on these work sites? What are like the top 3 skills that you're just like, I could not do this job if I did not have these?
Well, number one, it is communication skills. You gotta, one thing that I try to tell other blind people that are new in the field is that you being blind is intimidating to people, because they automatically can never figure out how they could do that without being able to see. And I never realized how powerful that is. People are, and me included, if somebody said that, the person that is going to fix your car or can't see, I would have said, "Are you crazy?" Back when I had sight. So I got to always remember that, going forward, that many times people are intimidated, and it makes even them self-conscious at times. So that's one thing that I think people really should think about, and so communication skills are really important to kind of make people feel comfortable with what you're about to do. And if you want to hone in on the 3 things, definitely the network. If you're in construction, you have other buddies in construction. So play that network, call buddies up, and you might have to convince some of them first before they let you out on a job site. But, that's how you're going to climb the ladder and get back in. Talk to people that and work on your own skills. When I first tried to hammer in nails without my sight, it wasn't pretty. So I took a board out and I hammered a ton of nails, and got to the point where I could feel, just by sound, I could tell how well I hit the head of the nail. And trust me, I can hear when somebody's hitting a nail and it's bending. It's an easy thing to hear, but to get comfortable with it, where you can rely on what you feel and what you hear and trust it. That's the skill that you got to baby and get better. But if you've been doing things for a long time, the skill is already there. You just got to learn to rely on those other senses the way you did your sight.
Wouldn't you agree your mobility skills too? Getting out there and being able to navigate around a job site?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Mobility skills are good. when I go out on job sites with my guys, they, mainly Mark, he kind of keeps an eye when he sees that I'm out an outlet and I'm going to land another outlet. He just hands it to me. Am I cheating? No, we just kind of have a program that we have that works well for both of us. So that's kind of what just kind of naturally occurred. And I've gotten very comfortable, and so has everybody else. So you got to find how you fit in and where your skill is most valuable, and really your brain still works just as good. So take advantage of your knowledge there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Great. Do
doing
you
a
do
lot.
house calls to South Sac, Jim?
Go ahead.
Do you do house calls to South Sacramento?
Do
Oh,
you do work in South Sacramento?
Yeah, we
Yep.
do. Why?
All right.
Why, you need some work done?
Well, it's because the where we plug in the TV, like sometimes it'll make like the lights in the kitchen go off.
Oh,
But we had, it was really funny because it was an emergency, and we found an electrician who didn't have one hand, and my family thought that was incredible. Like, oh man, an electrician without a hand. Can you imagine if I bring you over? You're gonna blow their mind, Jim.
You
This is
can't-
Diane.
Hey,
Jim installed my doorbell.
okay.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
Hang on.
I remember
cool.
that.
Todd's hand is raised here.
Yes, I have a question for you, Jim.
Sure.
Okay. My question is this. One of the if you invented a talking voltage meter, wouldn't you also invent like a talking color identifier to identify different colored wires? Or,
Yeah, you could. And that's a good example of how far do we go, right? With the insulin pump thing, it was a much bigger thing. But when it comes to identifying a wire, is there ways that would it be handy? Would I buy one if they had it? Yes, but to actually go to the trouble of doing that design just for a wire, because and yes, it could easily be done. Is it worth the money? That's what comes down. And right now, I have to say, for how much trouble it actually causes me is really zero. How much time do I actually spend trying to identify wires by color? Not much in my trade.
well, then how do you know which wire is which?
Like I said, I have like my rolls of wire. If they're individual wires, that's easy, right? But I also have like Romex, and the first thing I'll do is, I'll just take a piece of tape and stick it on the black wire, and then I know there's two other wires. One's a ground wire, the other one's a white, and they're different because one's bare. So so I come up with schemes like that for identifying. And honestly, if it's in a panel, if it's hooked to your main circuit panel, as long as there's not power on it, I know there's continuity between the white and the neutral and the ground, because they all land at the same spot in the panel, and that tells me what the black wire is. So I use my meter. I find other ways to get around the fact that I can't,
That's pretty cool, because you're the first blind electrician that I've ever heard about. And I must say that I'm really honored that you're able to do things like that. I mean, I knew somebody named Bruce Jr. who was able to do wires and stuff, but I never thought that was possible. But now that I know that you can do it, and you've proven that you have done it, I'm blown away that you can actually do something like that. That really is amazing. Before I end my question with you, though, there is one question like I want to ask. You invented the triple talk and the triple talk USB. Did you also invent the triple top mini as well?
Yes, yes, I
Yes,
did.
you did.
Cool. All right. Well, I better let a few people get on with the questions, but it was nice talking to you, Jim.
Sure. And another thing I have is I bought these gloves that are rated for over 2000 volts, and they're really thin. So a lot of times when I first get to a panel, I put those on and I just get in the panel and start feeling because, and that gives me a visual picture of what things look like in the panel. And then of course I'll shut things off, and I got testers and all those great gadgets, right? But they're helpful to just get a feel on things for me, which is basically a visual.
For those of you who are not clients that are on this call, we talk a lot about using the tool that's the most efficient at the moment. There's many tools to do the same task. Some take longer than others given the situation. So Jim was talking about using the most effective tool to figure out the color of his wire by using Be My Eyes. Okay, got it. Don't need to ask again for a long time, and put the piece of tape on and got it. So that's more efficient and more time and money wise than developing a device or something else.
And to tag along with that, using the most efficient tool for the job and deciding when to use your energy to do something or to save your energy for something more important.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Question.
Yes.
Yes. First of all, this is Norman. Thank you for that. As a quote maintenance technician and someone just freshly off what I thought being forced to retire because of quote safety measures and things like that, it definitely has inspired me. Now, to be honest, I really don't want to go back to that. So my question is about working with the society and Randy in particular. And I know they do music. Have you, when you talk about electronics, is there any tips you could give me about, because you mentioned synthesizers and things like that, about working with boards or helping to see them or stomp boxes? I have pedals that I bought before, when I was sighted, that now I can't really, the colors are off. They're just hard to see. Is there, or if I wanted to try to do some recording, or I play guitar, so that may help too. Is there any tips or anything that you might share about that kind of keep me in the game, so to speak?
Oh,
He's a
absolutely.
musician.
I play guitar myself, and when it comes to
excellent.
pedals and things, I always buy physical. If it's got knobs, it's always
Okay.
easier for me.
Okay.
And and I've been looking at some of that stuff actually with Randy, because that area has grown a lot, for playing music and some of the equipment that is being made more accessible, right? I'm always a big fan of knobs and switches, physical switches, and you could easily label things like that, but after you worked with a piece of equipment for a while, I don't do you really need a label on a lot of things? You don't. You learn where by position. I do a lot by clock position, and just I think of when I see six buttons, I picture it as a dice, is at the or a braille cell, and I just kind of learn you know positions and ways to adjust things like that. And of course, what's so great about music is you get feedback, right?
Okay.
And so use the feedback to your advantage. Somebody, I don't have perfect pitch, and I bought, like recently, it's been over a year. I bought what's called a Roadie 2. Do you know what they are?
No.
and it's not made for the blind, but I always find stuff that could be used by the blind that is not made for the blind. And what this thing does is you put it on the key of whatever string you want to tune, and you pluck the string and it turns it and tunes it, and it beeps at you when it's got it on perfect tuning. And you could set it up for multiple different tunes. So if you want to do a drop D tuning, just hit the drop D button and go around all 6 strings. So there's adaptive stuff that is made. I find myself a lot of times looking for something that'll work, right? I've got a big wood shop in my garage, and I really only have, I think, 2 pieces of adaptive equipment. I've got a click wheel and I got a talking level. And really, that's all I really needed. You know, there's a groove on my table saw that tells me that if my fingers are in it, it's not going across the blade, you know?
Okay.
And so I look at things and try to find, how can I use it? How can I use it safely in that case? But stay tuned, because you know, I'm pretty plugged into the music program with Randy, and
Okay.
we're always looking at equipment and things like that and better ways to do it. And you should get involved in the music program, because that's what we talk about mainly in that program is, well, what gear are you using and how'd you make it work, and what's accessible, what is not.
I plan to, and you mentioned, Randy had mentioned that apparatus. He didn't call it by name, you know, to put on the tuning pegs of the guitar.
Right.
And he had mentioned a gentleman, I think by the way of, I think it's Stewart at Skips. But is that someone that I would talk to about getting that, or do I talk to you about getting those? Because that is the frustration right now, is using my stomp box to try to tune the guitar, and I have to literally stick it in my face. So, and you know what I'm saying. So how would I go about getting that? Because I definitely want to get.
Well, I can help you with that. I just searched online. They're sold online. But another thing that you could use is there's an app called Talking Tuner.
Okay, like
I could probably send him the Amazon link.
Yeah, you could send him the Amazon link. It's called a Roadie 2. It's really great. And
I would love that. Yeah, because the guitar tuner and all that, those are great if you're by yourself. But if in your room with other musicians, you're trying to tune with that, and you know the nightmares to go with that. So,
and that's why I like the Roadie 2, because everybody's playing, and I don't have to tell everybody to be quiet. I don't have to try to tune by ear. I just throw it on a peg and go around, and it's tuned.
Well, thank you. This was
okay, Norman. I get to get even with you now.
Okay.
Norman's wife's favorite thing that I said to him when we did his assessment was, "Stop trying to see it."
Rely on your ears and your fingers, Norman. You'll thank me later.
Yeah.
She's right. She busts me out in class all the time. She'll say, "I know you're looking at that, so stop."
Gotta touch it.
But just so you know, I would look at it too if I could.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
No, my pleasure.
It's about 11:37. Anybody else got questions? It's awfully quiet. All right. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
same time tomorrow, correct?
Yep. Same time tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
If Stormy or Samantha's on there, can I re-get the link for the yoga class? I don't know if it comes in an email.
Yeah, is that Norman?
I have your text still, Norman.
Yeah.
I can text that to you.
Text would be better.
Okay.
All right.
I got you.
Well, thank you,
you.
everybody.
That
And
change.
if you guys
you.
want to tune in tomorrow, please do.